Welcome, everyone. Today we'll be talking about the foundations of visual thinking, and it's being hosted by our guest panelist, Tommy Shook.
So, why visual thinking? Most of us rely on words when learning, solving problems, or sharing ideas, but kind of an over-reliance on verbal thinking alone can hold us back. We're locked into a single way of thinking and processing information. Words can be stagnant, so verbal thinking can keep us stuck in a rut. We end up running in circles, having the same conversation over and over, where drawing can make us creative. Sketching help us see more options, make connections, and spark ideas that verbal thinking alone would miss. Uh, our sketches talk back to us, suggesting new direction for our thinking. Words can be confusing. They're fleeting and ephemeral. It's easy to get lost in the sea of words. Images bring clarity. So when we create an external representation of our ideas, it helps us think more clearly. Weaving words, visuals together enhances our thinking. Sometimes they're boring. Words themselves aren't boring, but an over-reliance on them can lead to a state of boredom and disengagement. So creating an image is engaging. It's bringing your body into the process by making marks and keeping us engaged. Tapping into verbal and visual processes makes for a much more interesting and memorable experience. And sometimes, we forget. If your goal is to remember, retain, and recall information, working exclusively with words is not the most effective approach. So, however, imagery is great for recall. Sketching out ideas leads to deeper links being made in our brains. The information becomes more accessible in the future. So both verbal and visual learners can benefit from this visual processing. So I'm sure it's no surprise. I'm going to tell you that visual thinking is the key to unlocking these limitations. And what is visual thinking? The basis for visual thinking boils down to a focused state of attention by creating visuals. You don't need to be an artist, though, or even enjoy drawing. So visual thinking requires only very basic elements to master. Simple shapes are the literal building blocks. So these simple shapes can be combined to build more complex objects. We can use scale to emphasize hierarchy or importance. Proximity can tell us how things relate. And then color is a great way to differentiate. I'm not even using color here. It's simple blacking out and shading, but that's a great way, to kind of differentiate things and pull them apart. So all in all, so we'll be touching today on a few ways to start incorporating, visual thinking in your day to day. The first being note taking. We'll be using pictures to support and enhance your notes, information that you want to document, but also remember. This is probably the most common use for visual thinking, and we're going to get deeper into this later. Presenting ideas, getting a concept out of your head and onto paper is helpful. Once you've had it out in front of you, you can take a step back and start to work out details. And then brainstorming. Maybe you're in a group setting and you want to get all the ideas, kind of out in one place, so you can build and compare them. So I put together some kind of fun examples on how visuals can bring out what's important and engage your brain better. The first one is a parking example. So recently I went to a parking lot, and it's, you pay first, spits out a receipt, and it tells you, your assigned spot, and D11. I don't know what D is. It's a level or it's a row. And I know my letters and numbers pretty well, but I never really trust what the designer of the system was thinking is the same thing as me. So, without too much effort, we could add a little map to this ticket to give me some idea, relieve me of any stress. Maybe I've got kids crying in the back or something like that. And I just tell me where to go. I know this all assigned parking thing is stressing me out. Another example is the boarding pass. This guy, Paul Acker, took a swing at like a lean boarding pass a long time ago. And I've kind of taken his idea and run with it. So notice kind of the order of operations here too. You can see the first one, Seattle to JFK. It shows up on the map. And this might have helped that guy who, once bought a ticket. He's trying to go to Cape Cod, and he bought a ticket to Cape Town instead. So he didn't have a map in front of him, didn't know where Cape Town actually was. Could have saved him some time. So the next are the date and time, right in order. You got a clock there, and then followed by that is the gate. I challenge you to find the gate on the other tickets. You can look long enough, but if you're under pressure, someone asks, "What's gate is it?" I don't know. I don't know where to look. Super easy here. Once you know where your gate is, you want to know what time you can board, what group you are, and then followed by your seat and its location. There's probably some other garbage, I left out, but we can turn it on the back. We just have to quit using, these dot matrix printers. So these are just some examples of how visuals help us. We're going to get started on some easier pieces, and the best way for everyone to get started is to start a visual library. You don't need fancy illustration skills to start working more visually. You want to give yourself a head start. When you when you want to do work visually by giving yourself a little library to work from, so you don't have to think like on the spot. Okay, what do I put for this? What do I put for that? So I'm going to show you guys some really common icons you want to practice, and then you can use the next time you're taking notes or representing. So I've broken it down into parts, and this is how I would learn, an icon and gain that muscle memory. It's simple. It's a circle with some arcs in it. And this is like our North Star. This is our goal, the thing we want to, reach at the end. And so here's a bunch more. These are all, really simple strokes. The mountain is like an obstacle or a journey. You can't have that without, a milestone, which is the flag. Clock's going to get used a lot. I have the box down here for a product. Even if you don't have a physical product, it's a representation, right? It's a metaphor. So boxes are easy to draw. Everybody's probably forgot how to draw cubes, but this is it. Draw a diamond and then some connecting lines. I use the light bulb a lot. I draw a light bulb with a few different shapes. And they're actually just letters. It's like a sideways C and a U and a V, some lines in it. That's a light bulb. If you try to do it all at once, it usually comes out looking pretty wonky. We've got some other ones in here, but you guys can tailor your own library to kind of fit your own industry, whatever it is. But do one and then hammer out a bunch, and you'll gain that muscle memory. Next time you're taking notes, you'll have it ready. Something else that's super useful is people. People are simple. Stick figures are just fine. I draw. You put a little nose on him to give him some life or a sense of direction. I like this kind of like this box man. He's got a little more personality. He takes a little bit longer to draw, but when I want more emphasis, I might use him. But the easiest are like the kind of the ghost guy, profile icon. You can do these really quick. Whatever. I shaded this on. They're all running really fast. They got some motion lines. Another good thing about these ghost people is they work really well in groups. So I've got a group of people. That's super easy. And then, groups of people always have something to say. So notice the container shapes here. These guys are unsure, so it's more ephemeral. These guys are very sure, so it's much more static. So speaking of these kind of shapes, let's look at like connectors, lines and shapes. When we connect ideas or concepts, we need a way to do that. So we're still going to use basic shapes to build these. Here are some of them. These where we go might end up a little complicated, but I promise you, if you break them down into simple pieces, it's very easy. Containers, these can denote a certain type of idea. If it's uncertain or flexible, dynamic, the shape around it can kind of give it that word a little bit more meaning and kind of background or context. Then we have the arrows. I drew a bunch of different arrows, like just as examples. But you can pick one and make it your style, perfect it, draw it over and over again. The more you use it, the more you're going to be able to make it look, the way you want and use it, point any direction and not look weird. Your first ones are going to be ugly. Don't worry about it. It doesn't need to look good because when you draw it, you're kind of making a mark in your brain. Everyone else is going to notice it too. You can even point and say, whatever, this is an arrow. Sorry, my next one will be better. And people will remember this. It's about making a point. So where can you use all this stuff? So the first one is going to be, note taking. These are obviously your personal notes where you're documenting some type of lecture or video, but you might also try to like put down your own ideas onto paper and work them out. So it's kind of intake and output, documenting and presenting ideas. So this is where you might be trying to express an idea to a group or document something that someone else is saying. So you want to do it in a visual way and kind of remember it and try to, is this what you're trying to tell me? And then brainstorming is another great option. So this is where there are multiple inputs. One person can do all the drawing. Sometimes we'll do that, or sometimes everybody wants to come to the board and draw and put their own twist. And you can use this visual space to kind of build on ideas, and then they always have a place and a perfect that that you can come back to and talk again. So we'll go a little closer into these notes. So I'm going to merge two different note-taking processes. So the first is like the Cornell method. And if you don't know the Cornell method, it's really simple. There's four quadrants. You have the topic at the top, the name, and all of that information. You use this main body for your kind of in-the-moment notes, just writing as you go. After the fact, you'll go and you'll put like the key ideas, pull them out into the margin, right? And you write out the key idea, and then at the end, you'll put a summary, what you got out of this page. So the power of this note-taking style is that when you go to review the notes, you'll know where to look, for the most important ideas. But I'm thinking we can improve on this by adding some visuals. So that top section, you'll add a topical sketch and a large title newspaper style. This kind of also, the topical sketches gets you warmed up a little bit. Your hand, I need warming up, draw some doodling, get everything, get you, make sure you haven't drank too much coffee, your lines are straight. You'll still use like the main body for your, in the moment notes, but add some dividers to break up different topics as you move down the page. You can add visuals here if you need to. But then, within the section to the left, you pull out the key ideas, but add a visual. So a profile icon for an important person or a star for a key idea. You can make these up as you go, but I'm telling you, if you build that visual library first, you'll sketch them out really quick and recognize them easy. So in the bottom section, I would do like a diagram. I have bullets here, kind of numbers to show a hierarchy, but a diagram might work really well too to kind of show relationships between different ideas. So next, we're going to kind of look at a couple other examples for documenting ideas. And the first one, it's taking tea. This is a really simple process, but I'm going to show you how to make tea step by step. You should have seen these at first. Like my first, coffee pot. This is like what do you call it? Like a electric kettle. They were super ugly. I had to draw, 10 times before I was like, okay, yeah, that's how it works. I'm really good at drawing coffee mugs now. So the step-by-step process, you'll see it just goes through. It's very linear. Wait 3 to 5 minutes after you put the tea in. Add your milk, add your sugar, and enjoy. This guy's pretty proud of himself at the end, and you kind of have like an interesting drawing at the end. That's also somewhat informative. This is very linear though, and if you don't particularly like to draw or want to draw, but you want to tap into some like spatial reasoning powers of your brain, like a simple flow diagram works really well. You can see I've used some color here to like show the decisions being made. If you don't have tea, or if you don't want sugar or you don't want milk, because you don't love yourself, and then there's the opposite, kind of ways to run around. I would probably mix it up a little bit if I was to do this. Some text and some images in there would be probably my routes to do things. A little bit of both. Another use is the mind map for brainstorming. So this particular process doesn't require any drawing skills either, but you could also add some in here. It's great for showing like relationships, hierarchy. Basically, this one highlights the like machine learning algorithms and their real world applications. So like the name suggests, mind map, it kind of, start an essential topic, and then in the middle, and then move out. This could be like a question, the big idea, or whatever it is you're trying to wrap your head around. I use the like cloud container. It's kind of unknown, ambiguous. We're trying to learn, explore more about this. Then you'll add step by step, the themes around it, and you kind of put them anywhere with the connecting lines. Put a box around those because those are concrete. We know, These are the different kind of themes within machine learning. Um, and it's easier to see how the ideas are captured on the page and connected, so you can continue to go into this process as many levels as you like. What I think is kind of cool about mind mapping is that it aligns with the way the brain works. This process of connecting ideas is a way not too dissimilar from the way neurons connect with each other and make this massive network that is your brain. I also like that it allows you to kind of fill the page organically. I'm not too concerned with where things go on the page. I can just find an open space and then draw the line to it. And again, if you like to draw, you can add imagery here. It's a great place to do it. So now what? Well, you keep going. So this was just a quick intro into visual thinking, and I want to dig into some of these more at a later time. Each topic is its own webinar. So keep an eye out on the platform, LinkedIn. Make sure you're signed up for our email newsletter. But a little homework to get you guys started. So work on your library. Find 10 icons that you think you might reuse. Draw each one out and then repeat it until you start noticing that muscle memory kick in. Like play around with size. Like how small can you go with it before it starts losing integrity? Next time, take notes. So next time you're taking notes, try it. It doesn't matter if you're just drawing a star, every time there's a key idea or something, you'll start to build. This is something that definitely takes practice, and you're going to build up, and by the end, you're going to have really visual and interesting looking notes with your own style. And don't worry if it doesn't come out looking great at first. um, and next is learn from people who know way more than me. There are some really great YouTube channels out there if you just search visual thinking. There's all kinds of things, sketch notes, way more detail out there, that hopefully we'll get into as well. And that is it. Let me see if we have any questions before we say goodbye.
Awesome. Yeah, excellent, Tommy. Wonderful job. I loved how everything was hand illustrated. It really brought the whole lesson home. And, as someone who struggles with confidence in my drawing, seeing how you design and draw those shapes really help boost my confidence in like what I can practice and how I can get better with it. So thank you for sharing. I
Of
speak
course.
on behalf of the audience. I came out of this a lot stronger as a visual thinker than when I went into it. So we'll open it up for questions. If you put them in the QA section, I will feed them to Tommy and he can share his wisdom. To start us off, though, how do you think that this can be utilized to enhance user experience design and product development, like kind of crossing over, the two things that you love?
Yeah, it's a great way to well, there's multiple parts. So, when I'm talking with you guys about new concepts or ideas, I have to use visuals to help express that idea. Um, but also, when so I use icons a lot in my job, obviously. When I'm talking to our users, I might, you know, draw out simple examples of an interaction that I'm working on. I might have them draw. Again, this isn't not about like having good drawing skills. This is just about getting in the habit of using any type of visual representation to kind of show a relationship or a key important part. You can use it. It's really just a great way to communicate and document.
Excellent, excellent. So another question that came up earlier was, for people who maybe lack the confidence to put pencil to paper and share it with their team, what are some strategies that maybe we can employ to ensure that visual thinking tools are accessible and used across teams? Is there any software or other hacks that you recommend for people?
Yeah, well, even before software, I would just be kind to yourself. I've been drawing my whole life, and these drawings are honestly not that good. So it is something that anybody can practice. Like true, just like the guitar or anything else, some people have a natural talent, but if you practice, you will get better. I promise. So start small, simple objects. Don't overthink it. Don't, you know, and when you do draw something, break it down into simple shapes. Every line can be its own one. Start with one line, add another. It's not meant to be drawn all at once.
Mm.
Obviously, there's a million YouTube tutorials out there on how to become a better artist. There's paid courses, that I get served up a lot, in my sponsored ads. I use an iPad and Procreate to draw when it's handy and charged. But I often, if I just need to jot something down, it's pencil and paper. I use it all the time. And then I use two different colored pens to come on top of that. I have post-it notes. There's always something handy, for me to sketch something down, to draw and write.
So, follow-up question there, right? I know that in my experience, designers love their tools, right? And so you mentioned Procreate, but is there a specific pencil, paper, notepad, notebook that you love? If I want to fall in love with the work that I'm doing through the tools that I'm using, what do you recommend?
I do recommend going to an art store. It's one of my favorite places to go. There are so many different type of drawing pads. They're going to have different sizes. Get the ones with the graph paper built in. The little squares. It kind of keeps you organized a little bit. Keeps everything scales correctly. When you write, it's some nice lines to use. Find one that you really like, and then just keep buying that one. Same with pencils. I mean, everyone likes a good, lead pencil, but experiment with some of like the graphic pens. They're kind of like felt tips. There's so many different options out there. Everybody uses something different. So try different things out there. Feel what works for you best. Some people don't like the iPad. It doesn't have that texture. You can put like a texture film on it. But then I've got like a film on my iPad, which is kind of strange. It just takes a little getting used to. Everything is going to be practice. You're going to suck at this at first. It's just the way it is. And you have to give yourself grace and say, this is going to be ugly. It's going to get better. It's not the point.
Well, I appreciate that, and I will take it to heart. Um, so one of our attendees asks, how can you apply visual thinking for visualizing or telling a story with complex data, perhaps seismic interpretation?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it is. So I think this is going to be where you're going to mix up a lot of things. And the key is to kind of start small. So initially you might just have, if you were to use a flow diagram or even just a bulleted list, you're going to throw one in here or there. And eventually, and that's what I mean, is going to start to grow. So your first time you do it, you're like, okay, well, I can use a simple drawing here. Everybody's going to use it in their own way, but it's going to be about starting small. Just use it when you can. And next thing you know, you're going to feel, "Oh, I can use it here. I've already used this icon. I can try this again." Um, and just slowly build over time. Everybody's, industry is super niche and specific. Your use case is going to be a lot different from somebody else's. But the key is to just start trying something, and then adding more and more as you go.
So when you're, in a live meeting taking notes, how much of the visual thinking elements that you mentioned are you doing in real time versus how many are you coming back when you review your notes and adding them in to, synthesize it and really retain it for yourself?
It kind of depends on the pace of the meeting. If somebody's talking a lot and really fast, you might not have time to stop and draw. Or if you do, it's something simple. One thing I'll do a lot, say for instance, that the a key feature, you draw that North Star, but I don't draw the whole thing. I'll just put a circle, and I can come back later and fill out the rest of it. Or you can just draw a star. Something to bring your attention back. That's usually going to be done after the fact when you have time, unless there's a pause or it's slow, someone's talking really slow. What else is going to say? It's important to like try to have time to do it. The other thing that there is a study out there that came out that even doodling will kind of like keep your mind from wandering during meetings. Keep that like ADHD under control. So maybe there's nothing going on, nothing that you want to retain from what's being said. Still, draw in some stuff. It keeps your brain engaged. It keeps you locked in a little bit, so you don't drift off.
All right, all right. So that makes sense. Um, Another question from the audience: how do you leverage generative AI in your work?
Oh, I'm still kind of a rookie with generative AI. I use it a lot. I use LLMs a lot for, for helping me write because I'm bad with words, right? I'm good with visuals. I've used it for like within the visuals. There's not a lot I've ever used before. I will say I do use a good like Google image search if there's you know a concept like let's say these ones on the screen here like library. I'm like what I don't want to like draw a library, but what's a good icon for that I could use for this particular word? Do an image search of like library icon, and you'll get the most common use case. Oh, duh, why didn't think of that? Just do a book. I don't have to do it. So I probably don't have a good use for generative AI and what I'm doing here, but I should probably look into that.
Yeah, I can tell you, Tommy, I've spent a lot of time working with the current generation of generative AI tools in the visual realm. Personally, I love Midjourney. I think it's probably the most creative generative AI tool. It's got the artist soul more than a lot of the other ones. Sometimes if you use the OpenAI DALL-E, it tends to look more like clip art, right? It's very sanitized, very
Right.
corporate in its appearance. So it's playing with the different models and trying them all out. Stable diffusion, control net. Some of these things are much have like a higher technical learning curve. I push people towards Midjourney because it's got a great community. You can see people who are having a lot of success in the Discord and start to learn from the way they prompt and take it from there. One of the coolest things that's coming out right now is you have tools like Runway and Kling, which allow you to take a static image and render video from it. So when we talk about visual storytelling, you can actually develop storyboards and put it together like a little 60-second reel that you can go and use as part of your pitch video, to help people visualize and think visually. It's a lot more dynamic because with tools like 11 Labs, for instance, does text to speech very, very well. So you can combine starting with visuals. You could use an LLM to generate your script and even give you concepts for some of the visuals in the script, and then compile it all down and be able to share instead of just sharing a script document, which you have to hope that the reader can visualize things. You can actually give them a little 60 or 90-second reel that walks them through it. So we're on this very interesting moment where I know there's a lot of hesitation or fear in the artist community. Some people feel like they've been, infringed from a copyright perspective, but I think from a
Sure.
pre-visualization workflow, very, very powerful and lets you search broadly in the visual domain before deciding on a vector and really putting in the manual work.
Yeah, it's great. I've seen a lot of the work from Midjourney, and it is really impressive, but it's pretty scary. You mentioned storyboarding, and that's really something we could dive into maybe in the future webinar. Storyboarding is really important, especially for some of the work I do, in user experience, where I'm looking at the journey, of a user, from beginning to end. So this is across time. So this kind of is a great a storyboard is a great way to show, you know, the different phases of things that make sense over time. So I think storyboarding is another great use case for visual thinking that people probably don't utilize enough because you want to think about the beginning, the end, and then everything in between.
It's interesting, you mentioned the beginning, the end, and everything in between. Are there any other frameworks that you find yourself using, in your visual thinking process, for what imagery do I need to create or how do I structure this? I noticed, for example, when you talked about the boarding pass, thinking temporally, right? Like, what's the order of information? Can you expand on any of that?
Yeah, right. So you really, I just, for the boarding pass in particular, I put myself, in the shoes of the traveler. What's the first thing I need to know? And it's like it's the most important information coming first, and then how is that helpful to me? Um, and again, that was like an exercise by Paul Acker, called the Lean Boarding Pass. If you look it up, and I just kind of like ran with it and changed things around a little bit. I think the order of operation, it is almost like a storyboard if you look at it, where it starts with the location that you're coming and going to, and then ends with the last thing you need to know, which is your seat on the plane.
Interesting, interesting. When I think about product development and user experience, one of the tools that I've used previously is user journeys or kind of that customer experience flow. How does that roll into this tool set?
I think it's really important with user journeys. especially, you have so many key points where the user has to stop and engaged. And what are they engaged by? And so we need to draw a little picture. I can write out, you know, the button, but maybe it's like we don't really know, let's think more in depth about what this user, has encountered here. And it's a modal. So draw the modal and write down what it says. Let's really look at it so we can kind of truly empathize with the user. It kind of brings us out of our heads and to kind of look at a visual piece and gives us another pathway into our brain where we can really kind of think differently at things and stop and look, okay, wait a minute. They're encountering this modal again. Maybe we could look at that in a different way.
Interesting. So when we think about, again, going back to this process orientation, right? You gave a great example about making tea. In my past experience, like those tools are great sometimes for showing the end to end, like what needs to be done. But sometimes I find that mine fail to show how the work is distributed. Do you have any like tips on how to, make it easier to visualize, like maybe where the bulk of the process is taking place, and what team or any of those sort of, kind of recurring problems where it's hard to see from just a flat process map.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing with some of these is you can expand on these as they go. That there's a, these are just examples, so these could be expanded on in a number of different ways from here, and that's why I think kind of the combination of like text and visuals. Like you're never going to get away with taking notes with only visuals, right? It would be pretty great. I can't imagine how that would work, but it's always going to be this kind of combination of written and visual stuff. So you're going to have to experiment and work at trying to get some of these things out. You're squeezing in a visual to just show like, so to help you remember, to bring importance to it, to make others pay attention to it.
All right. Well, thank you, Tommy. I think this has been really enlightening, and again, I gained some confidence, and I'm hoping that I can bring some of the tools you presented to my work this week.